Breaking news. They're coming for the kids. We're coming for them! Sisters broken badges flashing in the night. Knock down doors, no warrant, no right. Take the children, tear the families apart. Hide behind protection while you rip out the heart. Files fabricated, lies on the stand. Judges in their pocket, money changing hands. Parents screaming, cameras never show. The real abuse happens when the CPS shows. Scott ever standing fighting Tennessee DCS. For separation, they tore the family from his chest. Placed on a registry, no charges, no crime. Blount County DCS crossing every line. Evers versus the state, lawsuit in federal court. Exposing the corruption, tearing that system apart. Years of battle, justice delayed, but not denied. A father's resolve with truth on his side. No mercy, no justice, just power unchecked. We expose the corruption, put them under the rack. Got it for CPS. We won't stop, we won't rest. Breaking news every day. Truth cuts like a blade. Got it for CPS. Your empire's gonna fall. We fight for the families. We fight for the free. CPS. Your time is over. You'll see. Another case buried, another life destroyed. Numbers manipulated, stories over deployed. They call it protection, we call it abduction. State-sponsored kidnapping, legal corruption. Parents labeled unfit for daring to speak. Question the system and they label you weak. We document every raid, every lie, every theft. The resistance is growing, no more silent regret. No mercy, no justice, just power unchecked. We expose the corruption, put them under the rack. Got it for CPS. We won't stop, we won't rest. Breaking news every day. Truth cuts like a blade. Got it for CPS. Your empire's gonna fade. We fight for the families. We fight for the free. CPS. Your time is over. You'll see. You took the innocent. You destroyed the home. Oh, now the people are waking. And we're coming for your throne. No more silence. No more fear. The revolution starts right here. Got it for CPS. We won't stop, we won't rest. Breaking news every single day. Got it for CPS. Your kingdom's gonna break for every parent, for every child set free. CPS, we're gunning for thee. This is the podcast, Gunning for CPS, hosted by Scott Evers. Relentless in his fight, Evers versus Tennessee DCS. A father who refuses to yield, exposing every injustice, demanding accountability, reclaiming what was taken. The battle continues. Stay vigilant. The truth is our weapon. The system has fallen. Blount County CPS. Your reckoning has arrived! No more lies! No more lies! thunder roll. The truth is a weapon and it's claiming its toll. This is the reckoning. Gonna have us bring in the storm. Blue County CPS, your reign is torn. The reckoning. Justice screams your name in fire. For every stolen child, for every broken empire. The reckoning is here. Burn higher. Years of separation, pain they try to hide. Your gunner stands unbreakable, fueled by righteous pride. Blount County DCS crossed the final line. Now the lawsuit strikes like lightning, exposing every crime. No mercy for tyrants hiding behind the state. The people are awake and they seal your fate. Power you abuse will crumble into dust. The Father's war is raging, injustice we trust. Feel the ground shake, hear the thunder roll. The truth is a weapon and it's claiming its toll. This is the reckoning. Gonna have us bring in the storm. Blount County CPS, your reign is torn. The reckoning. Justice screams your name in fire. For every stolen child, for every broken empire. The reckoning is here. Burn higher. You took the innocent. You destroyed the home. Now the reckoning rises. And you stand alone. No more lies. No more chains. Gonna ever sway. Break the chains. Break the chains. Break the chains. This is the reckoning. Gunner Evers leads the fight. Blount County CPS, disappearing from sight. The reckoning. Your kingdom falls tonight. For every parent rising, for every child set free. The reckoning is here. Victory. Gunner Evers, still standing tall. Blount County CPS, the reckoning has only just begun. The truth cannot be silenced. Justice will be done.
I'm gonna pull the whole thing down. I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. Another Sunday night. Been an interesting week. A lot of changes going on across the country. A lot of things going on across the world. If you've not been keeping up with things as far as world events, once again, this broadcast is protected by the First Amendment. I am an international freelance journalist protected by the First Amendment under freedom of the press. Any attempt to silence this particular thing will lead to legal action by any platforms that assumes to take it down or say that any of this is misinformation, as well as the fact that I also have a federal civil lawsuit that is active with constitutional question enough to, if you've been keeping up with this, enough to expose the mass corruption that's been going on in all 50 states. It's enough to bring basically the CPS system nationwide basically to its knees. And if you guys don't know about that, well, that's what's going on. Well, this is the chance that we take, and every week we take and get together with you guys. This is where we take time to educate, expose. When it comes down to those things, this is for informational purposes only. Once again, I'm going to walk you through as we go through things. In my particular case, I will try to educate the public as far as what we've learned, what we found out. Last week, we ended up exposing the lie and the myth of the judicial immunity. There is no such thing. As a matter of fact, there is a good possibility in some of our other things, and you've heard it here, that yes, we know we're probably going to have to deal with a lot of different things. And right now, we've got one constitutional question put forward with a brief on it. That's pretty evident and clear and cut and dry when it comes to the Constitution. But there are several others that we're going to be proposing probably throughout the as the case evolves. Because we're going to get some answers, and we're not understanding. A lot of people are saying, "Well, Gunnar, what are you doing? You're just looking to win your case. You're looking at this. You're looking to set case law." All that. No, we are not looking to set case law. I am looking to set precedents. What does that mean? It's actually a case law that, like Marbury versus Madison, that will never be overturned due to the fact it's so constitutional and it's so foundational that it's just one of those things. And when it goes on there, it not only is it case law, but it's also the precedents. In other words, it's a measure or a thing that you must take, and you must meet that standard. And it's going to answer a lot of questions, because we're going into the federal court system with under the constitutional questions and under a 1983, and asking some very serious constitutional questions that a lot of people are just not asking. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people have, expressed different things with it. But until pen meets the paper, and until that paper meets the court clerk and it's particularly filed, it doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of hot air, which is a lot of people that do a lot of things in this particular movement. We've heard a lot of people in the past that are a lot of hot air. Nothing's ever been filed. Nothing's ever been done. We've actually done it. It's actually active. There's a lot of people out there that educate mainly on state courts and CPSs within particular states, or things in general, because every state's different the way they have it set up. It's not exactly the same, but it's real close. But it depends on how well they hide it. And some states are, well, let's just put it this way: when you look at their policies, procedures, and even some of their state codes, they're lazy as hell. They just copy and paste it. Even back in the day before copy and paste was, hey, what's this particular state doing? Let's just copy and paste it, and we'll do the same thing. Well, we are never to take, and for any reason whatsoever, for our comfort, for the false light of peace, or for the safety of the children, or the safety of the Americans, and all that other stuff, we are never to compromise constitutional rights for any of those things. Constitutional rights are the things that everything stops. It's the law of the land. It is the supremacy clause is even acknowledged by all 50 states in their state constitution. So a lot of you guys out there fighting your state case, you can find things that are in your state constitution to show that your magistrate and judges, especially in family courts and other places, are breaking the law and violating the Constitution. It depends on a lot of the stuff. It will apply across the board. Constitutional. The issue is the constitutional rights. Constitutional rights apply to everything, both criminal and civil. Probate is a division of civil court, so absolutely it will take in, and the probate court must take and follow those particular things. If it's not constitutional, this is one thing that a lot of people are. Hey, does it apply here? Does it apply here? If it's constitutional, it applies everywhere. Policies, procedures, statutes, codes, all of them must have harmony with the Constitution and the founding documents. If it doesn't, it's null and void. It's very clear. It's cut and dry. The problem is everybody's gone in during times when we didn't have so much information. We didn't have the internet. We were, it was a big thing, not even, 100 years ago, to make a phone call. Now we can do it anywhere across the world. just to make a phone call from the East Coast to the West Coast. A lot has changed in our country, as well as it has worldwide. Now we can get live stuff from across the world in almost real time with a short delay. Um, so a lot of those games that they would play, and they would hide in secret because they would do a lot of these things and pass these statutes and codes or policies and procedures behind closed doors. Why? Because you and I are not there. But once again, they have to be transparent and they have to publish these things. Now they're getting pretty slick on trying to hide these things, even on the internet. Well, we'll put it over here, or we'll put it under this department, or we'll put it under, the district attorney's thing, and it's not under the Department of Health and Human Services for my state, or it's over here under the governor's stuff, or it's over here under this particular thing. They'll file it the wrong way on purpose to hide it. That's not transparency. Transparency means if I'm from one state to another state, and that's another thing that I believe it should take and should be passed, is if it's very similar or anything else, we should be lining this stuff up. Like a Rule 60 isn't the same thing. A Rule 60 and in like Tennessee, Kentucky, and several other states is not the same thing in Illinois, or that they have different rules for it. This is where now a lot of people are saying, well, what is Rule 60? Rule 60 goes back to the big movement of the void ab initio. They categorize it. Don't just file a void ab initio. Let's call it a rule, and a Rule 60 and why it does. And then we'll categorize it. Is it Rule 60.01? Is it Rule 60.02? Even the federal has it, and it mimics a lot of states, mimic a lot of things that the federal structure does. But one thing we want to keep in mind, that, and we've got a short video here on this, and this makes a good thing, and this describes a few things. And guys, make sure you got your pen and paper with you tonight, because we're going to take a little test and see what you guys think on these particular things. But we're going to, we'll eventually get to a little test here and test some of your constitutional knowledge. Everybody's like, oh, what are you going to do that for? Well, because that's the whole point, is iron sharpens iron. We got to take and make sure that we're doing the right thing. To make sure that we're doing the right thing, we have to make sure that we're testing ourselves. We're making sure that we, are doing things the way that it's supposed to be done. We'll expose so many things, but here, watch this. We're going to just, go through this tonight like we do every week. Just walk the dog, so to speak. Here, check out this video, and this is about oaths, and this comes directly from the military. One of the generals that turns around and describes what it is, and he's straightening out his soldiers, the graduating class, of what an oath is. Now, understand the same oath that the military takes, and the same penalties, if not even more, goes towards your judges and magistrates and those that serve in public, even for the state. Well, I just work for the state government. I don't work for the military. The oath still means the same thing when it comes to the Constitution. But check this out.
Remember,
we don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that it's America, and we're willing to die to protect it.
you should
Guys, when I say stuff's going on and things are breaking down in this country to where it comes down to it, even with our veterans, that oath is for life. And a lot of people don't know that, yes, even if you served in the military and then you go into the civilian world, you can be recalled at any given time for any reason that they feel necessary. They can recall you. And if you're doing something unconstitutional or something that's going to threaten this country, say you get out of there and you end up going into, you become a judge or a magistrate. The thing is, you violate your oath, you can be recalled into the military, and then you go into military court. You bypass all the civilian courts. Nope, well, that happened on the civilian side. It doesn't matter. That oath It's for lifetime everywhere you go, and you have forgotten that. That same oath that our men and women serving our country take is the same damn oath that your sheriff's department takes, that your police department takes, that your sheriff takes, that your judges, your magistrates, your congressmen, your senators. You got to have that oath, and when you have that oath, it means something. And there's stiff penalties now. We haven't done this in a while now. If you go back and you watch people like Carl Miller, we've encouraged you guys to research, especially Carl Miller on YouTube. He has a ton of information there, especially on constitutional education. He turns around and says, listen, if you violate your oath as a judge or magistrate, and the Constitution's clear, you're to be taken into custody to the edge of town and hung at the edge of town until you die, and then left there, I believe it's for 2 or 3 days, to make sure you're good and dead and make a statement to the public. You don't violate your oath. We don't do that anymore, but we need to return to it. Why? Because the Constitution calls it out as saying that. Do you think things would be completely different? I mean, especially you people in the audience, what do you think it would take and do? Or do you think it would make a difference if people started hanging judges and magistrates for violating their oaths, as the Constitution says? I guarantee you there'd be a lot of people thinking twice of, well, I want to get ready to be a judge or a magistrate. Oh, hell no. If I do something and screw up as a lawyer, yeah, I kind of get a slap on the wrist or this, that. But judges or magistrates, no, they're gonna hang me. That's what the Constitution says. And we dealt with, judicial immunity. It's impossible. Why? It was created by judges. Just the simple fact of separation of powers, it can't exist. Why? Because they created it. And guess what? They can't make laws. Who makes laws under the Constitution? Congress. So judicial immunity, the fact that the courts are practicing it, is total bullshit. Why? Because it's unconstitutional. But once again, you're going through there and saying, no. And once again, you got to have somebody that's willing to put up the fight. Are you going to hear that in the lower courts? No, they're not going to hear it. Are they going to hear it in the state court? Absolutely not, even all the way to the Supreme Court. Why? Because it's too well protected. And once again, those are administrative law judges. They're not real judges. They're justices of the peace. They've renamed themselves judges. Go back and look at the history. They did it themselves. Hey, we're going to wear a black robe. Now, wow, we're going to imitate somebody that we're not. And then they get in there and think, now I've got the same power as a federal judge. They don't. And we've covered that before in previous shows. And like I said, if you ever think that you missed a show, once again, you've never missed a show. Just go on the YouTube channel, Gunning for the number for CPS, and you can go back and see past episodes there. I believe this is our pilot episode. I believe we are live on TikTok. And if any of you guys are watching this live on TikTok, hey, give us a shout out. We'd love to see you in the comments. Make sure that we're seeing there. Once again, this is all under Gunning for CPS. But like I said, hopefully this is getting out there, and this is another platform. And we love the fact that we were able to get back on Gunning for CPS. We did have to deal with some misinformation. I had to straighten out them people of saying, oh, wait a minute, I'm press, and this has been vetted, and yes, it's true. And once again, you can't suppress me. Do you want the lawsuit? Yeah, you got to know those channels to go through. Yeah, they didn't want the lawsuit. So yeah, a lot of things took and came back up. Now, we've had some major rulings here this past week. One of them being, and I know we don't always take, and well, I agree with you, Paula. Yes, judicial immunity, the Supreme Court should have never done that. As a matter of fact, they've actually gone back recently and questioned it, whether or not they did the right thing. But once again, there will be, excuse me, congestive heart failure. Yeah, right there. There's the scar from the pacemaker defibrillator. Got to have a little water every once in a while. Cardiac cough. It's a lovely thing. And for those of you that don't know, Yes, I do have congestive heart failure. I have less than 10% of my heart left. I save up my energy just to do this show, but after this show, I'm usually spent. Um, so I thank you guys for being patient, having some understanding, and once again, giving me a little American with Disabilities Act, a little bit of patience there. We're kind of casual today. We got poured on today um, completely. It just dumped on us a little bit earlier, but we just had a decision that was made this past week. I'm going to share it with you once again. It's on the Second Amendment. It has quashed, stomped out, void ab initioed everything for every state that has tried to pull some bullshit when it comes to gun laws. That's right, Second Amendment and gun laws, because once again, we deal with CPS, we deal with corruption, we keep you up on events and so on and so forth. Um, and it's completely crazy. Use the law for divorce, not CPS. It still is going to, all of this is going to have to affect even family court and divorce cases. They still have to have the structure for it. They have overstepped their bounds. We will actually probably do a special show on divorce that covers what they're doing, what they're not supposed to be doing, under the law and everything else. And they've overstepped their bounds because and they've been taught this is the way to do it because it's profitable for the county and for the state, which is illegal because then they can't adjudicate it. Why? Because they make money off of it. They have an interest or a bias. But check this out. This came in. This is a part two. You guys can go on. I try to be pretty transparent. You can see the stuff on there. All 50 states, everything's overturned. Everything when it comes to the Second Amendment. But check it out.
Nine to zero that strict scrutiny, the highest level of constitutional review, applies to all Second Amendment restrictions. More importantly, the court struck down 5 categories of gun regulations that exist in nearly every state. Permit to purchase requirements, mandatory waiting periods beyond background check time, training mandates as permit prerequisites, good cause requirements, and discretionary approval systems. Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority opinion joined by all 8 other justices. Here is the critical language. The Second Amendment codifies a pre-existing right. Government may not condition the exercise of this right on permission, approval, or delay beyond what is necessary to verify eligibility. The default is liberty. Restrictions require the highest level of justification. Let me break down exactly what this ruling does, how it affects each state differently, what gun owners can now do legally, how states are responding, and the critical next steps to lock in this victory. Number 1, here is what the Supreme Court struck down with this 9-0 decision. The court identified 5 categories of gun regulations that fail constitutional scrutiny and are now unenforceable nationwide. Category 1, permit to purchase systems that require government approval before buying firearms. This includes laws in Illinois, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Rhode Island that make you get a permit card before purchasing a handgun. The court ruled 9-0 that strict scrutiny, the highest level.
There it is, guys. I mean, they are giving us back basically what they took as far as the rights and everything, giving back the firearms and everything. That the highest court of the land has struck it down for every state, saying you will cease and desist immediately. It's unenforceable. Basically, if you enforce it, it's a federal criminal act for a state, a judge, or anybody else to enforce it, and they do not. Since Chevron's dead, they don't get to interpret. See, a lot of you guys don't understand some of those pivotal cases. See, when the Chevron doctrine was overturned, it means they must follow the higher court rulings. In other words, everything out of federal and everything out of their state Supreme Court. In other words, they don't get to have an independent decision when Chevron was alive. They just have to rule the way the other courts have ruled, and that's just the way it is. You just don't. And when they don't, then you automatically, once again, you go back to the Chevron doctrine. But when it comes to constitutional things like this, that's a federal crime. That's actually an act of treason for a judge to say that. That's basically what the Supreme Court is saying. If you do this, and we've already sent letters to everybody, and we've already done it to the attorney generals of every state. If you try any of this stuff, when it comes to these things, we have defined it. We have gone through it. You will not anymore. It is dead as of today. Bottom line, you don't get to argue. Why? Because you're a state. You don't get to argue. You get to do as you're told, especially when it comes to those things. And I think a lot of people don't understand what that means. I mean, they can't, they took away the tax, the fee for the tax stamp for the suppressors and all those other things. And no, we're supposed to have, when things become tyrannical, we're supposed to have the ability to cast off or take away that tyrannical form of government, one, by using our court systems, making our petitions known under the First Amendment, going through some of those things. But when it comes to the point it's invasive to the point it's life-threatening, we have a right under the, with the Second Amendment to defend yourselves. Did you know, and a lot of people don't know this, that if an officer is fearing your life and you're in the middle of an arrest or something like that, and it's an unlawful or unconstitutional arrest, and it comes down to where you feel your threat and your safety or your freedom is again, you have the right to what? You have a right to resist, even to the point of taking an officer's life. That's not me saying this. There is law on that. It's on the books. You can go look it up yourself. It says it right in there. Yeah. And once again, it was unlawful, uncommon. In other words, you're going to have to justify the fact you even said you're under arrest. Well, here's the other problem you can go back to. I can't arrest you because you haven't been indicted by a grand jury. There's one problem that they end up screwing up all the time. Second off, you're supposed to take me before a magistrate before you do anything. They don't do that, do they? No, they don't. They're not following the law. They're following policies of freedom. Well, we have the right to. No, you do not. But people don't know how to argue it, to challenge it. And those that do, there's a request in to seal those cases to make sure that you're not going to really find them. Or they have to be unsealed by a judge with a signature. They will do this stuff to protect themselves, because if it gets out, they don't want it to get out. That is where they are, the corruption within the system, known as the shadow government, the dark government, whatever it is, that now this is collapsing. Now it's all being exposed. They say, well, Gunner, it can't be that bad. It's not that bad. The law enforcement, everything else. Really? Have you heard about the sober DUI charges that are going on across the country as a sham? And they're not even going to court on it. They got lawyers and the DA. Listen, just take a plea deal. Just take a plea deal. Do you know how much it costs them to do it? No, make them take you to court. If everybody made them take you to court, you know how many cases they would have to dismiss under the speedy trial rule? But y'all take a plea deal. Take a plea deal. I'll do this. I'll do that. Nope. I want to go to trial. I want to drag this out. I'm going to put in for 1,000 witnesses. I'm going to cost the state so much money. They better hope they get a conviction. Well, then there's the other part. We have a conflict of interest. Why? I can't go before a state judge if I'm calling law enforcement or any of the others in a courtroom and that's a conflict of interest. Why? Because law enforcement is part of the state. We have to go to federal court. We have to move out of this jurisdiction. But they don't tell you that. And then they try to slide it through on these lower end courts. You can't do it. Not when it comes to that. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. All cases, not some, not there's some exemptions, that. All cases where the state, including state actors, all their sub-department, Health and Human Services, law enforcement, the whole 9 yards, everything else. Anytime the state is a party defendant or plaintiff in a court case, federal court's got original jurisdiction because they know about the bias. Matter of fact, go back and look at the history on Article 3, through the Federalist Papers and some of the other things from our founding framers. They discussed this. No, you can't have a state do this when the state would say that's a bias. You need a fair trial, an unbiased judge. Well, where does the judge get paid from? The state. Where does law enforcement or anything else, if I'm doing this with law enforcement or anything else, and I'm suing them, or I'm causing, I'm saying they're accusing me of this. Nope, we got to go out of the jurisdiction. No, we're going to hold on to it. No, but once again, well, I told my attorney this and that, but your attorney works for the state, and they probably don't even have a federal license. They're not going to make any money if you go to federal court. Why? Don't have a license to go. I can't. I'm not certified. I'm not approved. I haven't applied for it. I got to stay in the state court. Why? This is how the game has been ran in every state across the country. It's unconstitutional and it's illegal as hell. And they hate the fact I'm educating you and others on this particular thing. You can't do it. Why? The Constitution says no. And if you don't believe me, we talked about the DUI. Now, here in Tennessee, that has been going on and been exposed all over the place for the past 6 months. And they've been, even officers, highway patrolmen, troopers coming out and they say, oh no, we got to meet quotas. We got to do this. We got to do that. And they're being pressured to do this stuff. And we got other states that, hey, we've got the same scam going. This is known within law enforcement of the DUI scam. Why? Because you're not going to fight it. We're going to let you off. We're going to take some of your money. We're going to do this. Even if you're sober. Just plead this out. Just plead that. Why? If not, we're going to keep you in jail. And once again, keeping you in, you're jailed. I haven't been convicted. I'm not a threat to the community. You can't jail me under the Constitution. States are doing all sorts of illegal and unconstitutional stuff. Well, I got arrested and then they threw me in the jailhouse and then I was there for a week or 2 weeks or this. So no, when you have a crime that you've seen, you're supposed to go right before a magistrate, right there. If not, you've got to have an indictment. For the federal ruling, not a chance. And here's why, Lewis. Because the Constitution is absolute. And the supremacy clause of the Constitution, which every state has signed when they signed their statehood, making them the United States of America, to not follow the Constitution and to go in it or find a loophole or something. Nope. They can't even claim, well, that was given to us under this or, all sorts of other things. You can't do that. Once again, but you got to know your rights. But here's the thing. Well, I don't know this. Congratulations. They planned that part of the same corruption they've gone on in the public education system. You didn't get those rights, that education, did you, growing up? You don't know how to file a case. You got to have a lawyer. Do you really know your rights and how they apply to everything today? Have you kept up on your rights, including the advancements in technology, such as the internet and email and cell phones and all these other things that are constantly changing? Now we've got AI, and AI is doing it. What do your constitutional rights look for that? Have you kept on it as your due diligence as a citizen of the United States? Were you taught how to apply those things and make those adjustments? You were kept ignorant for a reason, so they could rule over you, steal your money, and take away your life, liberty, and happiness, because that was their goal. We do not live, and you guys will hear this all the time, our great democracy. We do not have a democracy in this country. Does not exist. We have a constitutional republic. So when I hear politicians or anybody else, and I'll watch little things, our great democracy or this democracy or this and that, that is the most ignorant person that is in that room. And how the hell did you get anywhere being a senator, House of Representative, or serve anywhere in government to think we have a democracy? We don't. We never have. And people are ignorant to that. And they're two different things. Go do your research and find out the difference. We've posted videos in the past on my Facebook page and a couple other platforms explaining the difference between the two. Not just me explaining. I've done those explaining, as well as Ronald Reagan explaining the difference. Several other presidents taking and saying the difference, and other well-known people. But if you, well, let's get back to the corruption. We talked about the DUI one. This is their new one, is these drug tests. Now, a lot of you guys that are out there that are dealing with CPS, you guys are very familiar with CPS and their corrupt drug tests, even in hospitals. And well, we've done this test, even to the point we were the first. This was the first platform to expose nationwide and actually internationally that nurses, CPS workers that are in the hospital, are giving incentives to nurses, especially in the maternity ward and the prenatal unit, and they are handpicking these people, even in, through these particular things, on what babies to steal and give false drug tests to. Yes. Matter of fact, we broke the story probably, I think, 8 months ago. Had a nurse, interviewed a nurse. I says, hey, what's going on with this? I said, I got to tell you this. He says, they are giving us trips to Hawaii or Puerto Rico, and they're calling it training, and it's like a 2-week long vacation. And CPS is, and getting with the drug companies and some of the others. Hey, man, they're doing a whole training seminar down in Texas or Florida, and we're from Minnesota or Alaska, one of those things. And we get a nice vacation on it, and then they give us a bunch of promos and and all I have to do is this, that. So see, it's not always just money exchanging hands. It's gifts, it's favors, it's promises, it's vacations. We broke the story on that. We know about it. Well, now it's rolled over to where government buying these drug tests again. Now they're pushing for we need these instant drug tests right there on the side of the road that we're going to give them to law enforcement. Watch. Oh, you guys are going to love this one. This will blow your mind. Yeah, that's right. Your local law enforcement is now using the same stuff from the same manufacturers as CPS workers. Yeah, but check out how they got this woman.
Bryan County Sheriff's Office back in 2022 has filed a federal lawsuit against the agencies.
Hold on a second, guys. I think it's, let me see if I can refresh that. See if it'll, here we go. Oh, let's turn the volume on here.
22 has filed a federal lawsuit against the agency, saying he was charged with heroin possession during a traffic stop when she didn't have any. Lead investigator Shay Schrader has the story from outside the federal courthouse.
December 11, 2022. Leslie Canales from Florida was driving on I-95 through Bryan County. She was pulled over by the Bryan County Sheriff's Office for speeding and failing to maintain her lane. But it was a bag of instant coffee like this one that landed her in jail.
In my mind, I'm thinking like this is like some movie stuff.
Connection issues.
I've only seen stuff like this in movies happen because I don't do anything like that. I have too much to lose.
This lawsuit filed against the Bryan County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Mark Crow, and several deputies claims during the traffic stop, deputies found the bag in Canales' car. She told the officers the substance in the bag
Sorry, guys, obviously some connection issues. If you guys don't know about coffee, one thing that a lot of times coffee is used to ward off the scent to drug sniffing dogs. It's well known. They've used it back in the day in the 80s and the 70s when they were sneaking cocaine into the country. It was a well-known deterrent for dogs and everything, as well as cayenne pepper and a few other things. So it's kind of a red marker. Well, my first thing would be is Fourth Amendment. Well, I mean, plain view, it's coffee. That's not probable cause. Well, we think it's in there. Okay, well, what's your fact? You went from reasonable articulated suspicion what's your fact? Is there a fact that you know that there's something in there? No. Well, now I'm going to test it, and now what ended up happening, you guys can go back and look at it, but you got the basis of it, is say it tested positive for heroin. Was there any heroin? No, that was a roadside drug test, and took her in and charged her. Now she's got to pay. Why? Because then they send it off to a lab and there's nothing in it. Another woman with contact. I mean, that's these drug tests, and we know these drug tests are being put out. We know they're faulty, and here's the bad part, especially when it comes to CPS and the mass corruption of this. They have so much faith in these drug tests that they go off of the first one, not the second or the following, and it literally says it in there. And they know, once again, how can you be sure? How can you be 100% sure that that is not giving off a false positive? Where's the double redundancy? Cover your butt. They don't do that. And a lot of them go through. So you guys need to challenge that. If you've got that in your state or you're looking at that, challenge that. How do you know it's there 100% of the time? And you can go back and you can find people that, nope, that was a false positive. That was a false positive. Those people that are doing that are failing drug tests and then all of a sudden passing them, why are you guys not subpoenaing the drug manufacturer or the testing manufacturer of those drug tests? Why are you not suing the hell out of them to shut them down? I'm asking you a question. It's a legitimate question. Why are you not following through with the follow-up lawsuit? You gave me a false positive, and it was used here. And under my state's law, your one has to be impeccable because I only get one shot at it, according to their thing. You could sue the hell out of the state if you so choose to do under that, because nothing is foolproof. Anything made by a mankind is flawable. It's not, once again, we're not perfect. We're not the creator. You know what I'm saying? You got to account for that. Even the Constitution accounts for that. Error, human error. It did it in the Declaration of Independence. You don't believe me? Go back and look at the Declaration of Independence. What's the Declaration of Independence say? It turns around and it says that we will give up our rights for a certain period of time, and we'll exchange it for comfort and this, that, till it becomes tyrannical. Then that section of it turns around and says, hey, we're being oppressed. This is tyrannical. Then we not only have a right, but we have a duty to overthrow it, or throw it off is another terminology according to the Declaration of Independence, and destroy it, and then reinstitute a new system. But there's a provision in there most people don't turn. Well, we'll just put it in a new system. Well, it's, don't do the same boss, same as the old, well, say hello to the new boss, same as the old boss. That's not what that's not what the Declaration of Independence tells us to do. If you find the error, make sure you make changes in the law, the codes, whatever it is, that it never happens again, to the best of your ability. That's what the Declaration of Independence puts on we the people, and the pressure it puts on Congress to do such a thing. It's, once again, it's a foundational document. That's where we derive our rights from, not the Constitution. The Constitution was a contract law that basically puts the reins on those that serve and elected or appointed officials and actors. It tells them what they absolutely cannot do. Now, the Constitution is not a negotiable document. It's an absolute. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people say, well, case law this and case law that. Now, you want to end case law, or you want to use the right case law? Use a case law that cites both judicial and or constitutional canons, because constitutional canons are like judicial canons. They're non-negotiable. They are absolute. You must follow them. So we ain't going to banter back and forth. Why? Because case law is an opinion. but a case law backed up by a constitutional canon is absolute. And what do you mean, Gunner? This is why you get cases that have never been overturned. Marbury versus Madison is one of them. It's one of the shining examples. Several others that are out there. Once again, they don't come to mind. Once again, you'll have to forgive me of that. We're going to bounce back and forth here a little bit to the comments too. Joshua Nelson. Okay, your daughter was taken with no evidence in Minnesota a few years ago. Okay, well, then that would be clear and convincing evidence. No, they can't do it off the hearsay rule. You're going to have to fight it with your own state. And if they're saying that there was abuse and neglect, then I would look at your state's constitution and research it, because like here in Tennessee, we have something very similar that goes through that they can't do that stuff. In other words, they're saying that, and then they've used a criminal code, even in a civil case. That's still a criminal code. It still quantifies, and it'll go there in the federal court too. You have to point it out. But even in the under the Tennessee code, it says no person shall be made held accountable for a crime which abuse and neglect of a child is a criminal act. So you got to understand the codes they're putting with that, and they have to cite that in their paperwork, especially with their order. And when they use something and they're stupid enough, which they are that stupid, like they were in my case, let me use a criminal code in here. No, you idiot. Now you've just this just proves the fact that what? You tried to have criminal court in a civil courtroom where the threshold's down here, and you're breaking the law. You're like you said, you were looking for the loophole. That's exactly what CPS does, and they go to the lower court. Matter of fact, those courts the state ain't even supposed to hear cases where CPS is a party. Why? Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. You're a state entity. We're supposed to be in federal court. You're in the wrong courtroom, but nobody's pointed it out, and it's sure as hell the judge or magistrate ain't going to correct him. Why? Because it's making them money. It's keeping money in it. Once again, this would defund so much, and the amount of back pay they would have to pay for the decades for the crimes they've been committing under all these cases they've heard, let alone acts of treason. You just imitated a federal judge, man, when you come up with that ruling, and everybody is a co-conspirator. Oh, wait, you didn't see that part? Oh, yeah. File it. And when they come back, oh, well, we're not going to hear this case. We're not going to hear this case. We don't hear family court cases. Congratulations. I've even got something for you, because they have to hear those cases. One, under Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, but since they've been paying attention to the case that's already filed, and they know what's been filed, because they all know when stuff goes in and you actually submit something that's called a constitutional question, the federal courts take those very seriously, especially when it's articulated and you back it up with evidence, like everything I did of all the criminal acts. And just so you guys know, to maybe help you understand when you're doing, especially you out there that are doing things pro se sue jurors, especially in federal, don't file with your feelings. Is what I'm going to tell. It basically educates you on that most people get stuff kicked out for. Keep it clean and dry, and make it look more like criminal acts on a civil side, not feelings. Feelings goes to when you get into court and you have the actual hearing. Don't put it on the paper stuff. You can describe it a little bit, but don't get too far into it. But basically, you're basically in a civil case. You're saying what's broke, which is why you're going to the court. In other words, some part of the contract has been violated. A criminal act has been done in this particular case with this civil part of doing things. Now you're in a whole different story, because that's a breach of contract. And that's the breach of contract you have between you, or what they assume is you and the state, that you've not signed anything, which is why CPS, and we always tell everybody, don't ever sign anything for CPS. Why? Because that is a form of contract law. I mean, if you have to, and it gets to the point, you put it under duress and all rights reserved. You got to articulate these things, man. Don't assume, well, I've got this, and not unless you've claimed it. It's kind of like I heard from one church saying the old name it and claim it. Yeah, you got to name it and claim it in the courtroom. And then here's the other thing. Keep in mind, too, just because it's said in the courtroom, audio, video, and all that other stuff can get tampered with, destroyed, or screwed with. But when you file hard paperwork with the court clerk, even if it went on in court, follow up with it right after. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the record and everything else to make sure it's on paper. Make sure that you're doing that. Why? That's just covering your butt. That's just smart, a smart way of dealing with the courts. Now, a lot of people say, well, you're trying to practice law. I'm not practicing law. You'd have to be specific to practice law. I'm telling you the general things that anybody that knows that goes into the courtroom has to learn these things. So anybody that wants to try that bullshit or something, oh, you're threatening judges. I didn't threaten nobody. I am reiterating what the Constitution says. If you want, I can go show it to you. I'm not doing it. I'm telling you what is required. But that's, once again, I digress. So let's go back to, there's been a recent ruling, and this is in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, that this was kicked back to where I believe it was a case in West Virginia dealing with family courts and so on and so forth. They said, well, we don't hear these cases. Well, they took it to the Court of Appeals. Well, the Court of Appeals comes back and says, oh, no, you're going to hear this shit, and that's bullshit. Family courts are not exempt, and once again, it's a myth. And now the truth has come out, and now there's a ruling on it. So you guys got your pens and paper. You want to pay attention and take notes, especially on every show. Like I said, if you've never missed a show, because you can always go back on YouTube and rewatch these shows. You can share from there on your media platforms. I would really appreciate any help. And thanks, guys, for going just over 1,000 in probably less than a month for our new paid show that's on TikTok, and we're live here on TikTok. So hopefully we're still live, and they haven't tried to shut it down. But let me show you something here. This is on that case on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and check this out. And once again, that's if this thing will turn around and play and not be real choppy. We've had storms come through, so it's a little bit crazy.
There's been no other point in human history where a population would have accepted such mass treachery by their government or ruling class. Politicians were hung for a fraction of what they're currently doing. And they get away with it, with approval rates of less than 10%. If that's real, if it's even 10%, I would argue it's less than 1%. We are being governed by people that every single person hates, and yet they manage to cling onto power. And they don't do it only to steal silently. They steal publicly, not to do small things. It's not tiny transgressions. It's literal genocide of native populations. They're getting away with it. And at any other point in human history, the politicians would be fearful of the people for a fraction of the crimes that are currently being committed by the ruling class across the entire West. How did they get away with this? They got away with it, and they're still getting away with it, because the mass demoralization has been incredibly successful. It has been massively successful. Everybody is demoralized. Everybody's blackpilled. Everybody's doom and gloom. We may not see each other again, so make sure to follow this page. There's been no other point in human history where a population would have accepted such mass treachery by their government.
Okay, as you guys can see here, if you're following it, it's in the comments here. It's about a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit originally filed in 2019 on thousands of children in West Virginia foster care. The system alleged widespread systematic failures, including unsafe placements, inadequate services, understaffing, delays. And this is off the Just Deal law. That's right in their suit. And basically they kicked it out. And because and you'll see the quote here, because federal courts not only, and this was a reply from the Court of Appeals, because they kicked it back saying they didn't have the authority. It's family court. We're not going to deal with this. This is something to deal with the state. They have to manage themselves, right? Here's the ruling. This is what the Court of Appeals says. Federal Court of Appeals, because federal courts not only have the authority, but also a duty to remedy systematic constitutional rights violations, we reverse. Senior Circuit Court Judge Henry F. Floyd wrote the majority opinion rejected the argument that federal courts lack the power to address large-scale constitutional failures within the state child welfare system. Would you look at that? But wait, there's more, because my case is in. And our argument came in. They're looking at that before, like I said, that decision, because we filed this several months ago. Yeah, they've looked at it, and the arguments and everything else that we filed with it say, yeah, you kind of have to. You're required to. It's your duty, no matter how big, how small, you still have to hear the case. Even if the whole state's screwing up, even if I want to bring a case that against a state, for example, as, sue juris, as one of we the people, to say, this ain't class action, this is individual, I want to take on the whole damn state, you have to hear the case. You're the federal court. This is not, we're not dealing with, and I know a lot of people and a lot of you guys out there have heard the same thing from the federal courts. Well, I got rejected, and the reason they put on there is we don't deal with family court issues and this and that. That is an outright lie. And if that was put in your thing, you can use this case in your appeal in the federal appellate court to say, here is the decision that was made. This is what we must go with. Going back into everything in the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, you must hear cases against the state. Once again, they've kicked this back and forth and played with it. But like I said, guys, we are returning to the Constitution slowly but surely. Our laws are changing. The courts are finally getting, and the federal courts are getting off their ass, and they've had enough. The DOJ and the FBI have come up, even for administrative law judges, that turned around and said that protection and all that bullshit that you had before, we're done with it. That was put on live TV in a press release. I mean, you guys can go back and find that. This is ridiculous. This stuff should not be happening whatsoever. Well, we're going to do one last thing before we're going to wrap up this show. We're going to run a little constitutional test. So you guys got your paper and pencil ready? Okay. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to go back, and even, like I said, even if you miss it, go back and watch it. And I want you to tell me what your score was and send it to me on Gunning for CPS on Facebook. If you're on TikTok, send me a message, a DM message on what your score was. The other platforms, so on and so forth, just go to one of those platforms, Facebook and or, like I said, TikTok, Gunning for CPS. Send me a message on that, on what your score was. But here's somebody dug this up. This is what you're supposed to know by the time you take and hit middle school. This is a middle school constitutional ABC test. Let's see how well you do.
Constitution test ABC. Start with A. What is a change or addition to the Constitution called? Say your answer out loud if you don't say, and time doesn't count. That is amendment. What are the first 10 amendments of the Constitution called? Bill of Rights. What title is given to the head of the Supreme Court? Chief Justice. What 1776 document declared U.S. independence from Britain? Declaration of Independence. A presidential candidate needs at least 270 what to become president? Electoral votes. What series of essays written by Hamilton, Madison, and Jay supported the ratification of the Constitution? Federalist Papers. What agreement at the Constitutional Convention created a two-house Congress? Great Compromise. What chamber of Congress is based on population? House of Representatives. What is the ceremony where the president takes the oath of office? Inauguration. Which branch of government interprets the law? Judicial. Who was the King of Britain during the Revolution? King George III. What 1803 land purchase doubled the size of the U.S.? Louisiana Purchase. What 1803 Supreme Court case established judicial review? Marbury versus Madison. What's the term for rights people are born with? Natural rights. Cases that go directly to the Supreme Court without appeal have what? Original jurisdiction. What is the introduction to the Constitution called?
Hold on. Did you guys see that on letter O, original jurisdiction? That's Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 he's referring to there, guys.
Preamble. What is the minimum number of members needed to conduct business in Congress called? Quorum. The formal approval of a document or amendment is called what? Ratification. Who is the leader of the House of Representatives? Speaker of the House. Who is the third U.S. president? Thomas Jefferson. The preamble's goal is to form a more perfect what? Union. What's the president's power to reject a bill passed by Congress called? Veto. What was the 1794 protest against a federal tax on whiskey called? Whiskey Rebellion. What is it called to return a person accused of a crime to the state where it was committed? Extradition. Which 1781 battle effectively ended the Revolutionary War? Yorktown. How many amendments did the original Constitution have when ratified in 1788? By the way, if you like these intellectual trivia games like this and you're looking for a trivia game in real life, I built one. It's a drinking trivia game. You compete with your friends in a trivia battle, and if you're smarter than them, you'll win. If you're not, you'll end up drunk on trivia. It's live now. The link in my bio. Get it now. Support a small business and get drunk on trivia while you're at it. But that is zero. How'd you do? Do you know your middle school?
Okay, guys, there you go. There's your constitutional test. And a big thanks to all the TikTok and Facebook providers for those posts and being able to share those posts. We have given you credit for those and quoted our sources and everything else from there. But yeah, that is a middle school test. How many people struggle with that? I'd say a lot of people today struggled with that, actually, to know those answers. And that tells you exactly how you have been conditioned to be a slave. To be ruled over, that because you don't have the education. One, they kept you ignorant. And what does that mean? You're going to have to spend big money. What do you spend big money on? Somebody to represent you. Okay, who's that going to be? An attorney or a lawyer, right? First thing with Miranda, what's it tell you? If you don't, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. If you give up that right, there you go. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be provided. Once again, these are all actors, but once again, it's about making money. It's not about what's lawful. Now, understand there's a big difference between legal and lawful. Okay, lawful is constitutional because it's the supreme law of the land. Everything must be lawful. All policies, procedures, statutes, and codes that every state's got, if it does not in harmony with the Constitution, it is null and void. The issue is that people say, well, I don't know how to do this. We should be able to know to go to the federal courts when we find out something we've encountered during our interaction with state actors, elected or appointed, whether they be, but state actors in general. And we find out one of their policies or procedures or anything else that they can look at and go, well, we're going to get you under this code, or we've got this policy, or we've got that procedure, and it's unconstitutional. And let me tell you how bad it is. It's so bad that those that work in law enforcement are so ignorant of the law or the Constitution, they're practicing policies and procedures and enforcing them that are unconstitutional. Yes, even stuff done by the state that is unconstitutional, but they're going to stay on the books and they're going to keep doing them till they get caught, and until you and I, as we the people, call them out, start filing those constitutional questions once again, and start affecting their bottom line and their jobs. Hey, you can't do that anymore. Why? We covered that in a previous episode. It's not always about money. When you go and file a 1983, you can file a constitutional question. It's one of those things. Is this constitutional? You're asking the federal court. You're making your full argument, and it goes back and forth, and then the judge will decide. And once again, a federal judge, not a state judge, they do not have the ability to hear anything dealing with the Constitution. It is not their jurisdiction. And for somebody to say, well, we hear it or we can make, oh, you can make the changes and help your boy out from screwing up. But at any given time, even in family court, you can submit a constitutional question and deadlock the court completely. Oh, no, I've got a constitutional question. Okay, ask it. Well, you got to put it in there. You got to put a brief with it of why you support, of what you think it interprets this and that, and then you compel the court. You have to freeze. You have to send this up to the Attorney General. You have to file in the lower court and say, now you must have a stay. You cannot move forward till this constitutional question is answered. And you let you would have to notify, as it says, the local district attorney. You'd have to notify the Attorney General of your state as well as the U.S. Attorney. I am filing a constitutional question. Then you would submit a federal 1983 form with your constitutional question, and you will wait. And you can connect it with your state. I have a state case. This is what's going on. I have a constitutional question, and it must be due. Then you're going to end up with federal oversight. Why? Because the federal court's going to make a decision, probably kick it back to the lower court and say, you must follow this. Now, it doesn't just go to that judge. Okay? It goes to the state attorney general. The state attorney general is supposed to make sure those orders are followed to the T. If they're not, they're in contempt of federal court, and they're probably in contempt of the state and the state constitution, because that's part of their agreement. Once again, as is followed, not every state is, once again, as non-corrupt. It depends on the state you're in. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it summarizes to. Josh, as you got more, like I said, a few other questions, this and that, when it comes down to, I have had several talks with the tens, hundreds of thousands of people on their CPS cases, getting a few details here and there. I don't do advocacy. I do education because it's very specific for your state. Every state is different. I don't get that far into it. And like I said, my focus right now has been the federal filing to stop CPS nationwide. Because if, like I said, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, if all these cases that they've been hearing, that means every judge is a criminal, every magistrate's a criminal, every CPS worker is a criminal in all 50 states. The DOJ will have to deal with it, as well as Homeland Security. It's not a joke. It's a very serious filing, and it's scaring the hell out of a lot of people, because it's the right question, it's the right filing, and they don't know what to do. Other than the fact of you're going to have to go back to being constitutional. But anyway, guys, I greatly appreciate you guys for everything that you've been doing, all the support, and the support you guys have been given, the knowledge, and everything else. Keep speaking up, telling your stories, exposing it. Get with people that are in your area, in your county, in your state. Share information, share knowledge. Be careful, though, of people out there that have got hero syndrome. Hey, don't do it this and that. Don't. That's not the way to do it. Educating you to where you make your own decision is one thing. But like I said, I've even had people in my particular thing, oh, you can't do it that way. You're going to do it this particular way, this and that. You're not going to do this. I go, I'm not after that. Once again, my case is the first case in American history that's ever been filed in this particular manner, this particular way, with the constitutional question and everything else in the history of this country. It's groundbreaking. That's how much of an impact and everything else, because it exposes everything. It means all the judges, all the magistrates, every CPS worker, every CPS this and that. And then you're talking about defrauding the government because they've received Title IV money. Yeah, that means every state would have to pay back every single dime for every case they've heard, and criminal acts, let alone if they separated and pulled the kids away, that would end up also, because they didn't have the authority to hear it or do that. That now includes that they'll have kidnapping charges. You're talking criminal. It's not a joke. So like I said, they're kind of preparing. So if you guys follow me on Facebook, you've watched where they've created a new fraud division in the Department of Justice, and they said that they're going to have it in every state. I wonder why. Because it's fraud. And yeah, they're going to be that busy. A whole department dedicated just to fraud. Once again, shout out to another freelance journalist and reporter, Nick Shirley, out there for the exposure he's done in the daycares, the several other things that he has exposed, as well as some of you others out there that do podcasts and independent reporting and news. Just keep pouring it out there, man. Keep hammering the people with the truth, man. That's all we can do. Return back to the Constitution. Keep the fight up. Keep encouraging people. Stay positive. And guys, we'll see you again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on all platforms. And hopefully the TikTok one, we're still good. And hopefully we get some good responses on TikTok. I'll get some messages. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week. Keep strong, keep fighting, and they are peeling the onion, and we will return to the Constitution one way or another.
Break the chain. Break the chains. This is the reckoning. Gunner leads the fight. Blount County CPS disappearing from sight. The reckoning. Your kingdom falls tonight. For every parent rising, for every child set free. The reckoning is here. Victory. Gunner Evers, still standing tall. Blount County CPS. The reckoning has only just begun. The truth cannot be silenced. Justice will be done.